The Basketball Hall of Fame 60 Days of Summer is your chance to see your favorite basketball stars live and in person. Check hoophall.com for a complete list of all these exciting appearances and plan your trip today.
You are a Hall of Famer. I mean, this is home for you. Is there, where are you in this ring of Hall of Famers, the faces here? Do you know where you are?
I know I'm up there someplace.
Up there somewhere, and that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, that's all. I'm in the house.
You're in the house. Oh, good for you. A quick overview. We'll give guys a quick overview of your career, and then we'll get into some specific questions. But you spent your entire career with the Boston Celtics, and there's probably not a more revered organization than the Celtics.
Boston Celtics certainly were. The thing that amazed me about the Celtics, I was coming out of New York City in whatever. Where were you ladies and gentlemen in 1960? Anybody, or many of you around in 60?
We have a couple.
Yeah, no one wants to claim it, huh? Okay, I understand. But in the 60s, if I was going to have an opportunity to play pro ball at all, I was thinking in terms of playing for the New York Knickerbockers, okay? Because that was our home team. And when Boston Celtics drafted me, it was an interesting time because one of the things you wanted to do in those days was to go to a team that was not doing particularly well, and then you'd have a chance to make it, a better chance to make it, and then perhaps make your place and be a part of that team. The Celtics had already won 3 championships when they drafted me. Now, I know what's going through your minds. You're saying, hey, how could they have won 3 championships without me, okay? I know what you're thinking. You're right on target, okay? But what I saw was that they had a lot of tough forwards. They had a lot of tough players, and that it would be very difficult to have a chance to make a team like the Celtics, okay? Interestingly enough, nowadays, so many players want to go to the teams that are already on top. All they want to do is have a chance, perhaps, to win a ring. Old days, the thinking was different. Can I help build a team?
So you took an opposite approach. You said, let me embrace this opportunity if a team that was struggling. But here you are, you walk into a great situation. But how easy or difficult was that transition to you to kind of blend in and fit in with a group that had already been established as the NBA's elite?
Well, fortunately, for those of you who may know or may not know much about the Celtics, they had a player, Bill Russell, who was certainly the anchor of the team. About 6'10", 235 pounds, extraordinarily talented athlete who had fantastic timing. And so he was able to thoroughly dominate the game, change it and dominate it. So when you have that kind of player, what happens is that you're winning all the time, and so the team does not change personnel. They're not looking to make trades, they're not looking to make a lot of moves because, hey, you're already at the top. So when I got to the team, my hope was, number one, that I could make it, but number two was to make sure that they didn't lose. Because if they had already won 3 championships, that meant that all the guys back home in New York would be saying they lost because they drafted Satch. Satch pulled them down, okay? So for me, I wanted to be there, but I really wanted to be successful in making the team, and I really wanted them to win a championship so that I would not be, let's say, the bad luck charm. So it was, side pressures of a kind.
Well, side pressure or motivation, if you will. But you're 6'6". Playing weight was?
Yeah, playing weight for me was 210, 212 pounds. I had always thought that eventually, when I was eating well and doing all kinds of things, I thought eventually I'd have a LeBron James kind of body, okay? Then I would really have been a killer. But unfortunately, 210, 212 pounds was where I was, and it worked for me. The thing that really helped me greatly was the fact that I had very long arms. And I guess they call it a wingspan of sorts, and mine was about 78, 80 inches, which gave me a distinct advantage. So a lot of people thought that at 6'6", I would have some difficulty playing the position up front. However, with arms that long, it gave me, frankly, the height and reach of someone 6'8", 6'8.5". So there were advantages.
Now, you played a position or maybe a role not as glamorous as the guy going out scoring 25, 30 points a game and double-double this, double-double that. You were more of a defensive specialist. Was that by necessity from the team, or did that line up more with your skill set?
Well, you know, it's interesting. When you play for a team, and I'm sure a lot of you ladies and gentlemen have had that experience or are having it right now, you may have some ideas in mind about what you'd like to do, but the coach and people who run the team sort of indicate how they want to use you. And in my case, it was the same. I came out of New York University in 1960 and had done a fair job of scoring, rebounding, and all kinds of things to work and play with NYU. So when I came to the Celtics, Red Auerbach, the coach, sort of a legendary kind of fellow, said, look, we've drafted you. What I need you to do is play defense and rebound. I said, Mr. Auerbach, I said, I can understand that. That's what you want me to do, that's what I'll do. However, let me just say, I've averaged between 20 and 24 points a game in college. I can score. And he said, that's great, son. What I want you to do and expect from you is to play defense and rebound. So he made it very clear about the role I was going to play on the team, even though I had other ideas. So I had to push those ideas aside and do what was necessary for the Celtic team.
A true team player. Now, you mentioned your background growing up in Harlem. I know there's stories and legends of the Rucker Park and the quality of basketball there. Maybe talk a little bit about your upbringing with the sport, when you were introduced, and what it was like just to compete in that environment.
Okay, New York City at that particular time was all everything back in the 50s and 60s, all everything as far as basketball was concerned. Now, as far as we were concerned, the only really good players came out of the New York area. But of course, the guys in Philadelphia who played in the Baker League, they thought that Pennsylvania and Philadelphia in particular had all the great players. And New York's interesting because we were in Manhattan particularly, and in Harlem specifically, and the guys in Brooklyn thought they had the killer teams and all the outstanding talent. And the guys in the Bronx, of course, felt the same way. So in Jersey, of course, what it was, it created tremendous rivalries. So across the rivers, across town, across the bridges, whenever we played as groups representing our particular communities. Now, there were some truly outstanding players coming out of New York at that time. And after a while, you start to really believe that you are really special when you can play against the kind of talent that was around. I had a comeuppance. I had a moment to learn a lot about myself and basketball. A gentleman that I knew was selling sporting goods came in and said, you know, Satch, I think I saw the greatest player that I've ever seen. A fellow called the Big O, Oscar Robertson. I said, come on, where is he? He said, he's in Indiana. I said, Indiana? I said, come on. We know all the great players are here in New York City, in the area. How can you tell me something about somebody living in Indiana being really an outstanding player? Well, later on that same summer, some people were able to, Oscar Robertson and his family were able to come to the New York area, and Oscar Robertson showed up and played in the Rucker tournament. And this is a big tournament in New York, and it's still relatively well known. And Oscar showed up, and I had the opportunity to get killed, I mean crushed, by this young man from Indiana who was Mr. Basketball, whom I kept saying to people, hey, he's not a New Yorker. How good can he be? I mean, after he got to about 40-something points, this is in the schoolyard basketball in the Rucker tournament. Hey, I was very humble. And as my mother said to me later on, there's always somebody better. You can count on it. There's always someone better. And this was a good lesson for me. Rucker tournament in New York was a place where all of the players all of the players from all over, Jersey, Brooklyn, Bronx, et cetera, Philadelphia, et cetera, would come to New York and they would want to play in the Rucker tournament. Many times you had an opportunity to play against pro players and in the Eastern League, players who played with the NBA at that particular time. Not in the same leagues, we played at different levels, but during the pickup games, you had a chance to play against some outstanding talent. And one of the things that helped me gain confidence was that I could at least hold my own against some really outstanding players, and that really helped me to grow as a basketball player.
Now, if basketball hadn't happened for you, I guess once upon a time you were hopeful of becoming a baseball player. You want to play in the major leagues?
Yeah, I had the dream. At that time, there was a black baseball pitcher by the name of Satchel Paige. And many of you may not be aware of him, but he was truly an outstanding player. And he got a chance to play with the New York Yankees and St. Louis Browns. He was a man of skills. I decided that I wanted to be Satchel Paige, okay? And I was going to pitch just like Satchel Paige, slow curves, a whole lot of clowning around on the mound and tricks and et cetera. So I got the name Satchel Paige. I inherited it, took it, and was carrying it. However, baseball was a little more difficult than I thought. I could pitch, but we played on surfaces that were not well kept, just dirt places, sometimes just concrete places. And the ball would sometimes be hit back to the pitcher, and the ball was taking some funny bounces. I got whipped to death being the pitcher, okay? And the baseball is awfully hard. I lost my nerve for playing baseball when I got hit a few times. So then I started playing more basketball, and I was growing very quickly. I was 6'2", 6'3" in the 9th grade, and people kept pushing me to play basketball, even though I kept telling them I'm really a baseball player. And hey, basketball became something I got to be a lot better at.
You figured it was safer to bang elbows and bodies with 7-footers than dodge a baseball. With the nickname of Satch, does anybody call you Tom?
Not many people call me Tom at all. I think my wife calls me Tom on occasions. Usually that's when there's anger involved.
Yeah. I was going to go there, but thank you.
I shouldn't say anger, never anger.
Urgency.
I like that,
Does
Russ.
that work? Yeah,
that's okay.
You can share that.
When there's urgency in the couple, in our togetherness, she will use Tom. But other times, I know that I'm doing well when she calls me Satch. Okay.
If you're just joining us, we have Satch Sanders here, a Hall of Famer and Boston Celtics great, joining us on the 60 Days of Summer, and we appreciate you being here. You had an opportunity once upon a time to meet Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, you know, Jackie Robinson was the first black player to play in the major leagues, and he came to Cooper Junior High School in the 50s, and he spoke to the assembly. And afterwards, I was so glad to have been a part of that audience. I came home and I told my mother, I said, Mama, Jackie Robinson, he spoke to me. He told me that I had to do the following things. And that was a mistake. Because what occurred was that she would always use the Jackie Robinson thing to guide me, shall we say. So whenever I do something that was sort of out of line where she was concerned, my mother would say, Jackie would never have done that, okay? And this went on and on and on. She beat me to death with Jackie Robinson, okay? But Jackie was special. And in fact, that's the only baseball game we ever went to, a live game, was to see Jackie play at the place called the Polo Grounds in New York. Jackie was a special athlete.
At 6'6", what position? You're more of a forward?
I was a center.
Center.
In school, in high school in particular. You know, the funny part about that, I was not much of an athlete. I could pitch, but I was not much of an athlete in terms of agility. So when I first started playing when they started pushing me to play in the 7th grade, in the 7th and 8th grade, I couldn't really play that well. There were a lot of players who could really play. And so Mr. Hartman was the coach at that time, and he would say, now, Tom, here's what I want you to do. I want you to run up and down the sidelines when I put you in the game, I don't want you to step into the fray. I don't want you to step in where all the other players who know how to play are running up and down the court. You just stay on the side and run up and down. If the teams go this way, you go that way. They go this way, you go that way. And so there I was, about 6'2", maybe 6'3", and not knowing how to play. And I can remember to this day running up the court and saying, "Like this, Mr. Hartman?" And he'd say, "That's great, Tom. Just keep running up and down the court just like that." Because they didn't want me to touch the ball. They didn't want me to get in anybody's way. And that's the way I started playing basketball. Meanwhile, all the kids who could really play, I mean, they were laughing all over. I mean, they were falling out laughing, okay? Thinking, just watching me run up and down the court on the sideline. But I will tell you, they didn't laugh at the end of 2 more years. There was no laughter at that time, as I kept getting better and better. And of course, the anger and being laughed at really helped. You know, you take those kind of things and you use them as fuel to make you better, to work harder. And by the time I got to high school, I was a player, but reluctant to play. Because one of the problems I had was that I mentioned earlier that I did not have the LeBron type of body. I was wearing size 14 when I was 14 years of age in terms of shoe size, and I had extraordinary skinny legs. And frankly, they're not much fatter now, you know? But at that time, people really laughed. I remember the young ladies laughed in particular, some of the cheerleaders on the side, when I had enough nerve to put on some shorts. So after that, I decided I wouldn't play high school basketball simply because I did not want to put on shorts. So I played in the church league, police athletic league, in YMCA. I played any place I could wear pants, okay? And then junior year in high school, they finally prevailed upon me to come out for the team. And I came out for the team in high school, and the coach lied to me. Henry Cohn was his name. I never forgot him. He said, "You don't have to worry. You don't have to take off your warm-up pants, okay? You can play with them on." And that's how he got me to play on the team. However, the first game, the team, we were playing well together, and instead of the first game, I got out to half court, and the refs looked at me and said, hey, son, you got to take off those sweatpants. You're not going to be able to play with those on. I said, "But the coach said I could play." The ref said, "You will not be playing on the court with those pants on." And so the guys on the team all got around me and said, "Come on, Satch, it's not that bad, man. You can take off the pants, you got on shorts and stuff like that. Come on, man, you're with us." And so they convinced me to play without pants, okay? So I had on my shorts, I'm out there trying to do my thing, and the cheerleaders are dying. They're our cheerleaders, and they're just laughing to death, because I've got feet out to here and legs about as skinny as my finger. Anyone remember Manute Bol at all? If you do, he was a man about 7'5", and very thin. I don't know whether he was Liberian, Nigerian, or where. Very thin and long and large feet. Anyway, they were laughing, and I got to tell you, what I developed was a hate for not only the young ladies, but a hate for the players, because they didn't laugh at the players who were relatively, good-looking guys, had better bodies. So what happened was I developed certainly a harsh attitude about anybody who looked better than myself, which meant almost everybody else. Okay? And I became a fighter, a lot of anger, elbows, all kinds of stuff. I had so many confrontations, let's call them, in high school, and it carried over into college, to tell you the truth. And, truthfully, it carried over into the first year with the Celtics. Too much anger. I had to get it under control. And when I came to the Boston Celtics, the interesting thing about that was I started deciding that I was going to keep that aggressive attitude. I threw elbows, I got in fights with players, and these were all grown men. I remember a player called Casey Jones, who was an outstanding guard for the Celtics, pulled me aside and said, hey, Satch, let me tell you something. You don't have a chance to make this team if you keep on fighting everybody and you keep on throwing elbows and you keep on hurting people. The players won't want to play with you. So we know that you're good and you're aggressive and tough, but you won't be on this team. So when he said that to me, it really scored. And I said, you know, I'll try and change my approach. I had no choice. I did change it. And I stopped being super aggressive. But it helped me through high school. It got me past the time when I was embarrassed about the legs and the feet. But that aggressiveness really hurt me when I got to the pro level. Have to control your emotions.
So after you put a little polish on your game, the question I was going to ask you next, and maybe help kids understand a little bit better here, you follow the NBA. Which player in today's game, maybe a skill set or style of play, might most resemble Satch Sanders in your prime? Is there a player you could say, you know what, I kind of played a little like him, his type game?
You know, I watched a player, Andre Iguodala, play. He played with the Golden State Warriors, and he was trying to guard a very tough player, LeBron, of course, a great player. And he had the problems that you would have trying to guard someone who has the ball about maybe half the times that Cleveland had it. And he was working real hard with LeBron and trying to keep him from doing well. And LeBron, of course, he did score an average of, I guess, almost 30 a game. But the thing was, this young man on defense was really extraordinary. You know, you can't really stop an offensive player from scoring. If they've got the ball and they make the first move, you're always at least a quarter of a step or half a step behind. But one of the things you can do is guard any player without the ball, okay? And I watched Iguodala at some very key points. You know, he did win the most valuable player for the finals, for the playoffs. But you watched him at a very key time when they were trying to force the ball to LeBron because they wanted him to always take the last shots or the important shots. Young man Iguodala was right up there in the passing lane with that left hand up, trying to keep LeBron from getting the ball. Now, there were two key plays in, I think it was the fourth game and the fifth game, where he was able to deny LeBron from getting the ball for 2 or 3 plays in a row, okay? LeBron at that time might have had, you know, anywhere from 25 to 38 to 40 points. But those 2 or 3 key plays at the end of the game was able to give the Warriors a good chance to win. And everyone says, yeah, but wasn't it the shooting and the score? Yeah, the shooting and the scoring, because everybody has to score points. But those 2 key plays, you had to really look and watch the game and see how important they were, because they kept the ball away from LeBron at a very important time. And that's the best way to play that kind of defense. You're not going to stop anybody, but you can contain them. You can take them away from their favorite positions. And Iguodala did that. So he's about the guy that plays that type of game.
Okay, good answer. Now, I don't know if anybody in the audience here who's been able to get up to the second floor of the museum, I think still in the broadcast booths up here, you have an opportunity to broadcast in your own words one of the most famous plays in NBA history, the Havlicek stole the ball. I'm sure you're all familiar with that or close to it. You were on the court. Where were you in 1965 when Havlicek stole the ball?
When Havlicek stole the ball, we had run into a problem. Bill Russell, our center, had hit the wires. In the so-called old days, there used to be wires holding the baskets steady. Nowadays, of course, they've got some pretty strong braces to handle it. But at that time, the rods, the cables were running into the stands. What happened to Bill Russell, our outstanding player, hit the cable with the ball, trying to put the ball in bounds. And there was a violation. So the ball was turned over to the Philadelphia team, okay? And they were trying to get the ball in. Very little time left. I think we were ahead by 1 point. That was it. And if they got the ball in bounds, they were going to pass the ball into Wilt Chamberlain, who was a pretty dominant guy at 7'3", 285 pounds, and it's really a super athlete. We would have a real problem in winning the game. What happened was, and we used to practice these little things, but they were taking the ball out of bounds. And so all of us were counting. John Havlicek was counting. When he got to 4, you had 5 seconds to get the ball in bounds, as you ladies and gentlemen know. And when he got to 4, he realized that the ball would have to be in the air someplace, because otherwise it would be a violation, and we would get the ball back from Philadelphia because of it. And he turned his head and looked, and the ball was certainly in the air coming in his direction, and he was able to knock it away. Havlicek stole the ball. One of the most important players in Celtic history. I was on the court guarding a player by the name of Lucius. Lucius Jackson was about 6'9", 265, and a guy I hated to play against because he had size, skills, and it was his strength that used to make every time I played against him a real task, okay? And in fact, he had knocked me out about 2 weeks before that. You know, in those days, we fought a lot more. And he had punched me. I had punched him first. But unfortunately, my punch was not very effective. This man of size, he took my punch and he just turned his head and rocked back. And then he came back with the biggest fist that I've ever seen. It just grew automatically, and he knocked me out. I remember my teammate, Bill Russell, saying to me in my ear while I was almost unconscious, saying, "You idiot, why would you pick a fight with the biggest, toughest guy in the league? No one can help you with that." You know, I'm on the side, blinking, in pain. They had to carry me off the court. It was an embarrassing situation. That's the man I was guarding in the last few seconds of the game when that ball was put in bounds, and Havlicek stole the ball. I was over there hugging Lucius, and he was over there trying to hit me, knock me away. They may have a shot of that someplace in here, but I'm over there holding on to him so that he wouldn't be the man to get the ball, and hoping, of course, he wouldn't knock me out again.
And that was one of your 8 NBA titles you won with the Boston Celtics. Do any of those do they blend together? Is there one that might stand out as being a little more maybe memorable or significant to you?
For me, with the Celtics, it was my first year. And as a rookie, I was on the bench most of the time. And I got more and more playing time as we got into the season. And then what happened was in the playoffs, I got to start in the playoff. Now that was huge for a rookie, a first-year player with the Celtics, to get a starting spot. And I started against the St. Louis Hawks. And that's why that series stands out the most. That was the 1960-61 season.
Okay, what we're hoping to do now is if you have questions in the audience, we're looking for 5 or 6 people who could come up and ask Satch a question. Some of the guys on staff here, they're wearing the dark blue or the black Hall of Fame shirts. They'll raise their hand, they'll come point you out, we'll line them up over here in the corner, and we'll bring you up one by one, and you'll have an opportunity. Satch, any advice that you might give to kids today who are starting to learn basketball or kind of in the middle of that journey towards doing something with it in their life?
You know, a lot of people have high hopes for their involvement in sports, and many times parents, coaches, and people will encourage them as much as they can. It's important that if you're going to spend the time playing a sport, try and learn as much as you possibly can about that sport, and try and work as hard as you can to be as good as you can in the sport while you're having fun, okay? But remember, it's a balance of work and fun. So many times you see interviews where they will say to players, the media people will say to players, "Are you having fun?" And the guys will say, yeah, I'm having fun. Well, let me just say this. If you're out there trying to, let's say, guard LeBron at 250, 60 pounds, 6'8", you're not having much fun, okay? You're not having much fun at all. What you are doing is working and trying to find a way to contain him. If you're trying to guard that young man, Curry, who shoots so well, I have never seen a shooter that good in my lifetime. He is phenomenal with the Golden State Warriors. All of his shots none of his shots seemed to ever touch the rims. For those of you who watched him play, he's fantastic. Anyway, if you're trying to guard one of those kind of guys or playing against, forget about those kind of players, playing against anybody you're playing against now who's maybe better than you are on the court, you're not having fun. You're working. You may have fun playing the game overall. You have fun after the game. You'll have fun before the game. You'll have fun talking about it. But I got to tell you, it's work and it's enjoyability, okay? So it's work and it's fun. But it's worthwhile because you're spending time trying to get better. So just understand that and get the most out of your talent. That's all you can do.
That's great advice. I'll ask you one more question, and for fear that I don't want to steal a question from our audience here, but I have to ask you about the bow tie. I mean, it's kind of a trademark of yours. Where Satch goes, the bow tie goes. Is there a significance to that?
Well, about 15, 16 years ago, I'm working at the NBA, and a coach comes by, and he just looks up and says, "You know what, Satch? I've watched you, we've worked together, and et cetera." He says, "You are a bow tie kind of guy." I said, "Well, I don't wear bow ties." He said, "You will." He came into my office, and he took my tie off, and he tied a bow tie on. And I looked in the mirror, and I have to admit, I'm a wonderful looking guy anyway. However, with that bow tie, I mean, I transcended myself. I was special, really special. I said, you know, I got to learn how to tie these things. And of course, it took me maybe 2 days of constant practice, and I was able to tie it relatively well. And as the years have passed, I've gotten better and better at it. But well, I like bow ties.
You wear it well, and maybe there's a bow tie Hall of Fame somewhere, so we'll look for you there. Now we'll give an opportunity. We got some guys lined up, half a dozen guys, come up and ask a question of you, Satch. When you come up, you can just tell us your name, where you're from, and if you have a favorite team or favorite player you want to share with us, and then you can ask Satch a question.
Hello, Satchel. My name is Maxwell Cowan. I'm from Walpole, Massachusetts. My favorite team is the Boston Celtics. My question for you is, during your years of work with the Celtics, who was the most memorable person that you got to work with?
Okay. Most memorable person that I got to work with the Celtics. You mean a teammate or?
Either, like coach, teammate, like a coach, a teammate, or just anyone in general who is involved in the organization.
Yeah, you know, it transcends, because it touches a few different guys. And the first thing, it's a good question. I mentioned Casey Jones earlier, who helped me by getting me to tone down my temperament and have a chance to make the team. And so he became really close to me and really helped me through some difficult times. So Casey Jones certainly is one. Bill Russell was kind of special. Everyone knows about him being the one who anchored our defense and helped us win a lot of championships. But the thing about Russell is that he was also very helpful on the court. He was talkative, and he would let you know when you're going to have a problem out there that he could see from his position as center. And he also would help you. If you're having trouble guarding somebody, he would say, "Send them my way, and I'll help you with them," okay? And so Russell, of course, was extraordinarily helpful. But the guys, if you're a front court person, the guys you want to really get close to are the guards, because they've got the ball all the time, you know? They're the ones that are going to get that ball to you. So Bob Cousy and Casey Jones, guys like that, I tried to really get next to, and if we were someplace where it was time to buy a beverage or two, I wanted to make sure they were never thirsty. Okay? That's about it for the guys on the team. Auerbach was a hard coach, always pushing us to win every single game, and that was a difficult task. So I didn't have much love for him, but I had a tremendous amount of respect for him because he was right on target. The guy I speak to the most, two guys I speak to the most nowadays, Tommy Heinsohn, who does the color and commentating for the Celtics now, and we used to play against each other almost every day when he was with the Celtics. And he used to wear me out until one day I beat him. After about 4 or 5 years of playing against him, I beat him one time and refused to ever play him again. And to this day, he reminds me of how unsportsmanlike that was. But, you know, hey, I was up on top for a change.
Yep. Finish on
The
top.
other gentleman was Frank Ramsey. Frank Ramsey, he's president of a bank down in the southwestern part of Kentucky. And we talk at least once, twice a month, yeah.
Okay. Hey, Max, great question, and great job picking the Celtics as your favorite team. All right, we'll have another question
Thank you.
for Satch Sanders.
I'm Savion Frangipani. I'm from New Jersey. So, I mean, 8 NBA titles is crazy. That's third all time. But is there any shots, passes, regrets, decisions that you wish you didn't made throughout your NBA career that you would take back?
Gentlemen's talking about regrets and things, decisions that I've made and things that perhaps could have avoided with better decision making. I certainly should have made a better decision in terms of punching Lucius Jackson, okay? I look back at that, that was about my third concussion, okay? That was not a bright move at all. And we've laughed about that ever since. You know, once again, I see Lucius at player gatherings and stuff like that, and he just laughs. He says, "What was on your mind, Satch? Why would you hit me?" Well, past tense. So that was one decision I certainly regret. The other decision had more to do with, I think I could have helped the team just a little bit more if I had worked a little more on my free throw shooting and also my outside shooting, okay? I didn't spend the kind of time I should have spent, particularly on the outside shots. The free throws, you know, I shot about, I guess, 75, maybe 80% sometimes, so that wasn't that bad, but I could have been better. Because in the close game situations, I got to tell you, I was really scared to get to that free throw line. You know, you get to that free throw line, and there's a minute, 2 left, and every free throw is important. You get there, and all of a sudden that arm gets kind of tight. Get scared to death about taking that free throw. And I remember taking some shots that were awful. They almost broke the backboard. I was so scared, you know? So I wish I could have been calmer. I wish I had taken the breathing lessons more seriously, okay? So I could have done a better job helping the team.
Okay, nice job. Thank you. Great question, too.
Thank you.
Okay, another question?
Hi, I'm Dante Frangipani from New Jersey, and I would like to ask, what was your best win in your NBA career?
Young man is asking me about my best win in the NBA, okay? And I've got to say it's not, I can't pick out a particular game, but I can pick out the series with the St. Louis Hawks when we played them in my first year. That series, I was able to average double figures. I was able to play fairly decent defense against a guy who I admire to this very day, Bob Pettit, and we were able to win it. And that series has always been a favorite time for me, okay? Now, that was in 1960-61 season. And I know what you're saying. Young man is looking at me with that incredulous look. He's saying, "Wow, seems like a long time ago. You don't look that old." You're right. You're right. Okay, you're right. Listen, thanks for that question.
All right, Dante, nice job.
Dante,
Nice job.
take care.
Got 2 more guys here for questions with Satch Sanders, Hall of Famer.
Hello, my name is Amari from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and here's my question. Who's the most difficult player you played against in the NBA?
Young man is asking about the most difficult player I ever played against in the NBA, and it's a man by the name of Elgin Baylor. You ladies and gentlemen probably don't hear that much about him. When they talk about great forwards in basketball, in the pro game, they hardly ever mention his name. Elgin Baylor was about 6'6", 230 pounds, extraordinarily skilled. For my money, he was the best player that, frankly, has ever played basketball, the best all-around player. Here was a man who could certainly score like a machine, could play very tough defense, was an extraordinary passer, okay? And I had to play against him, and, you know, I admired him when he was in college. And that was, for 2 years I watched him play in college when he came into Madison Square Garden in New York every once in a game. And he was really special. Now, the the thing about Elgin Baylor that I remember when I was in college was that he played against UConn, and he went up for a rebound in between two very tough players with UConn, and he tore his arm on the rim, and they stopped play to take him off the court. Now, I was standing on the sideline. I was at New York University as a sophomore at that point, and they brought him off the court with a towel wrapped around his arm. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was extraordinary for me to see a man who was 6'6", who had torn his arm on the rim close to his armpit. Close to his armpits. That meant that this man was at least 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet, over the rims. We just sat there as college players, and we couldn't believe here was a guy coming off the court. Did you see where the cut was? We were truly amazed. 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I was playing against Elgin Baylor in my first pro game. And I have to tell you, I wasn't nervous, but man, the respect level was so high. He was an extraordinary player. I wish that there was more about him. I wish people talked more about him. I wish you had more film about him. He could play against and with anyone in the NBA today. Anyone. Thank you.
Dante, great question. Check him out.
Take
Google
care.
him when you go home. Okay, final question.
Hi, I'm Arturo Ho. I'm from Anchorage. My favorite player is Mario Chalmers. My favorite team is the Golden State Warriors. Did you ever get to play against the Seattle Supersonics?
I had a chance to play against Seattle in my latter years. That was not my favorite place to go. You know, Seattle was interesting from the point, for those of you who spent time in Seattle, I could stand maybe a half a day in Seattle, but sometimes we'd spend 3, maybe 4 days up there while we made the rounds. And I got to tell you, it was always gray, it was always raining. And I got to tell you, it was hard on me to be in that kind of environment for that short period of time. I could never understand how people could live in Seattle. And everyone, people who live there say it's pleasant, great place, and et cetera. But for me, it was a killer. Same way. And frankly, it was a killer when I went down to San Diego for a few days. Always the same good, clear weather, never changing. I couldn't stand Seattle, couldn't stand San Diego.
And now you live in New England.
Hey, New England, we don't have to worry about anything. Nothing's consistent here. We get changes. Hey, we get changes all the time.
Hey, great question. Great job coming from Anchorage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for your Q&A and coming up with some great questions for Satch. We'll leave with one final question here. 2011, you were inducted to the Hall of Fame. Special place for you. What emotions do you feel anytime you're in the Hall of Fame?
Well, one of the first things when you talk about the Hall of Fame, this tells you when you've gained 1 or 2 summers. When I look up and recognize that I know personally about 1/3, maybe half the guys up there, that tells me something about the kind of time that I've spent on this earth. I've either met or crossed paths with pretty close to half the people up there. So when I come in, I get a chance to say hello and nod to a heck of a lot of people, okay? And it always amazes me to look around at some of the guys and say, I know him, I remember talking to him, I met him. He was introduced to me, that blah, 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 blah. And of course, people remind me, they said, of course you know these people, Satch, you're 77 years old. They always remind me of that part. But hey, I love being here as a visitor, and for years I used to come because I only worked and played in Boston, so this was an easy place to get to. And it's been a pleasure to watch the Hall of Fame grow and become the kind of institution that it has become, and it does pleasure me deeply to be in it.
And the Hall of Fame is fortunate to have you be a big part of it. So thank you for your time, Satch Sanders. We appreciate your effort to share with us. And thank you very much for participating in our 60 Days of Summer.